1, 2, 3, yeah! This is Amari Purple Talk. Yes. Welcome to episode 61 of Amari Purple Talk, a podcast where I share my thoughts on the Prince musical singularity. I'm Richard Cole, your imagination funk soloist. Thank you for tuning in once again. Please leave your comments in the comment section below, and please download on your favorite podcast platform. If you're listening on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And before we start the show, once again, want to bring up the Prince Twitter thread that's currently going on. We're covering the Sign of the Times Super Deluxe Edition. All right, we've gotten through side A of the original album, and the thread is currently on side 2. So we've got coming up later today, or at some point today, depending on when this actually is broadcast. Coming up will be Matt Thorne. His Twitter thread will be on the song Slow Love. Then on October 20th, you got Brother Hassan that will do the Twitter thread on Hot Thing. And then on October 21st, we'll have Erica Thompson with her Twitter thread on the song Forever in My Life. Mine will be the last song on the original album, which is The Door, and that will be on November 1st. But yes, by all means, if you haven't checked out the Prince Twitter thread, check it out. Check out the previous entries. Really great essays, deep dives, even things that I didn't know about, I'm learning, and also great insights and opinions on everybody's favorite track from the Sign of the Times album. So by all means, check out the previous threads and definitely come back around for all the upcoming ones too. This will be going all the way to November 2nd, I believe. Let me double check here. Yep, so it started October 6th and will run all the way through November 2nd. So check it out. It's the Prince Twitter thread. So jump on your Twitter accounts. Come on and flap along with us. And before we dive into the spoiler review of Neal Karlen's book, I also want to point out that Matt Thorne also has a book out. It's been out for quite a while. It's been a number of years now. But it's titled Prince. And it's a book that really focuses on the music of Prince. So it's not really kind of a tell-all or a biography, in the traditional sense of a biography. But like I said, it focuses on the music. So if you're definitely a fan of Prince, or if you want to just take a deeper dive, if you're new to Prince's music, you only have just a couple of albums and want to get a deeper perspective on some of the other albums in Prince's career, I highly recommend getting this book. So by all means, check that out. It's simply titled Prince, and it's by Matt Thorne. And try to find it in a bookstore near you, or there's always Amazon. So check it out. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to the spoiler review for Neal Karlen's book, This Thing Called Life, Prince's Odyssey on and off the record. All right, so when this book was first announced back in January, I had quite a few pretty high expectations of what this book was going to be about. First expectation I had was that this was going to be more in the style of the transcripts of John Lennon's interviews in Rolling Stone. For those that are unfamiliar, big interview in 1970, just off the heels of the Beatles breakup. His first real solo album, Plastic Ono Band, had just dropped, and he did like a 2-part interview in Rolling Stone. And there's this, just talking about the breakup of the Beatles, things like that. But that had been published in book form quite a few times over the years. And I thought that this book would be kind of along in that style, where it wouldn't be just a rehash of just Neal Karlen's Prince interviews that had appeared in Rolling Stone, but some things, because off the record, some things that were transcribed as well. You do get that with this book, but like I said, it's not just the straight question answer. These are kind of more in the form of anecdotes, but that was my first expectation. My other expectation, I thought it was going to be more of a biography style, where it kind of has a narrative flow from beginning to end. And again, you do get that, but it kind of takes a bit to kind of get to where, to me, there was a flow to it. And I was also expecting it to sort of add to the beautiful ones in a way, because these are, pieces of information based off of whether it was written down or taped interviews with Prince. So I thought you would get more of that in his own voice. And again, you do, but I just had a different picture of it. So I'm just going to basically cover the things that I like about this book. I'm going to cover some things that I don't like about this book, and then just kind of give it an overall rating from there. So for me, one of the things that I like is that kind of once you get to the second half of this book, it clearly defines Prince as a human being, which kind of in a way contrasts with the first part of it, which was a struggle for me. But kind of about 4 or 5 chapters in, pretty much I think for me, when it got to the bad son, good son chapters, then the flow for me kind of worked. And it does kind of help you peel back the layers, as time goes by with Prince, and firmly establishes him as a human being. I wanted to at first resist listening to Podcast Juice review of the book, because I kind of wanted to not be influenced by what was said there. But I did end up listening to it anyway. And if you haven't had a chance to check that out, by all means, check out their review. And there are a lot of points that, I do agree with them about this book. And yes, if you kind of have those sort of blinders on, where it's, you're caught up in the celebrity, you're caught up in the myth, you're caught up in the image, then this book will be sort of a huge shock, culture shock to you. Because basically, regardless of how much talent, how much genius anyone has, all heroes have feet of clay. They are human too. They have good days. They have bad days. And sometimes some of the greatest artists wrestle with the duality in a certain kind of way. Meaning you can't be 100% all things to all people all the time. And one of the strengths of this book is that it really plants Prince struggling with duality in quite a few areas, very similar to Marvin Gaye. And I would recommend you check out Divided Soul, which was written by David Ritz, and it's Marvin Gaye's autobiography. And You read that and listen to Marvin's 70s output from What's Going On all the way up to In Our Lifetime, and you will see an artist wrestling with duality and expressing that with some of the best music of the 20th century. And this book's strengths firmly plant Prince in that mode where it's like, wow, this is what he was going through. This is what he was wrestling with. This is the image you saw, whether it was on TV or on record, versus to what was said off the record. And now I haven't heard the audio book, and based on the Podcast Juice review, that is something I need to definitely check out, because the difference is this isn't somebody just kind of making stuff up out the air and say, I'm just going to put a book out on Prince and make a bunch of money. Now, there's some issues I'll address later, but at least he has the proof to back it up, whether it's handwritten notes. The audiobook version does play the recorded conversations. So that's something I need to check out too, and maybe get a even deeper perspective on the book. But this is just based off the hardcover book that I purchased. So, but yes, like I said, it does definitely plant Prince as a human being. And if for nothing else, I recommend you check the book out just for that. One of the standouts for me in the book, and like I said, this covers spoilers, so if you don't really want to know what's going on, then go ahead, hit pause, go out buy the book, read it, jump back in here, and pick up where we left off here. So with that said, one of the standouts for me is Prince's conversation with what I believe it was said that this is Bob Dylan's rabbi. And for those that are kind of unfamiliar with Bob Dylan is also from Minnesota. Definitely rock and roll royalty, Hall of Famer. Songwriting has had influence on the Beatles, Stevie Wonder. You wouldn't get Stevie's 70s output with the political awareness without mentioning Bob Dylan. You know, it would just be Stevie just doing R&B. But there are quite a few similarities with Bob Dylan and Prince. Both have had the capability throughout their entire careers of polarizing their audiences. Meaning that when Prince changed the direction or changed the style or philosophy, then there were fans that were able to go along with the ride, and then there were a lot of fans that jumped off the bandwagon. Same thing with Bob Dylan. You know, Bob Dylan, big folk music hero, decided to chuck away the acoustic guitars, pick up an electric guitar, and that pissed a lot of folk fans off. Then you fast forward to about maybe 10 years later, and Bob Dylan goes through this phase where he switched from Judaism to Christianity. And again, polarized the fan base. You know, depending on who you talk to, still was making great albums, but it's kind of similar. What Bob Dylan was doing was similar to what Prince was doing with, say, the Rainbow Children during his Jehovah's Witness conversion. One of the fascinating things about this book is that it really confirms for me the duality. And like I said, that is a cornerstone regardless of what religion or what spiritual system that you practice. You will wrestle with it. There will be those moments where you will be so gung-ho and try to go on this sort of crusade to convert everybody. There's some where you just kind of cherry pick what you need. And if that has relevance in your life, that's what you go with. Doesn't have an effect on other people, and you're not forcing it on other people either. And there's moments it's just like you just want to try to do good on a daily basis. And there are days where you're either wrestling with temptation or you're just having a bad day. And this, especially with the conversation with the rabbi, it confirmed quite a bit of what I had always suspected. Because, yes, you would see Prince on an award show and it's, Jehovah, or, certain interviews where he's, preaching the word of Jehovah. But then you listen to certain songs and it's like, well, wait a minute. Hang on a second. That doesn't quite go with Jehovah's Witness philosophy. Is Larry Graham aware of this? So I kind of found that as fascinating part of the book. Like I said, too, I remember the interview in Essence magazine where, I don't think he really, kind of, and based on other things I found out through the 3121 Twitter thread as well, that he still held firm to a lot of ancient Egypt spiritual systems. And I know in that Essence interview, he also references one of my favorite scholars, John Henry Clark. So, by the way, if you go on YouTube, check out the documentary A Great and Mighty Walk. Anybody with an earshot, I recommend that too. And especially in light of things that have gone on just this year alone. Yes, by all means, watch that documentary. Everybody will learn something. Black, white, everybody will learn something from that. But yeah, in referencing that, it's like, again, it's not quite Jehovah's Witness philosophy. But, like I said, I kind of felt just like a John Lennon, where it's just like, okay, well, I'm going to get into this for a while. And then again, cherry pick what I need and have that have relevance. And the reasons for that questioning, that's pointed out in the book. We'll get into that. Actually, that's going to be the next thing that I'm going to discuss. In tracing that deeper duality, Neal Karlen points out a couple of significant events. One is the death of Amir, which was Prince and Maite's child, was born with Pfeiffer syndrome. And the book points out it's Pfeiffer syndrome 2, which is the more tragic form of that genetic disorder. And, anyone that's experienced the loss of a child, that is going to shake you to your core. I don't care who you are. And if you're not shaken to your core, then there is definitely something seriously wrong with you. And for somebody as guarded as Prince, and to have that happen, then it is highly understandable, if that's a word, or it's understood that, to try to maintain that guard and not to be transparent and open, it's going to have an effect on you, and it's probably going to have an effect on a lot of people around you as well. So that's one thing. The other thing that's pointed out is just the physical wear and tear on his body. And Neal Karlen does an excellent job at sort of pinpointing how the other thing that Prince was passionate about was obviously basketball, and how a coach prevented him from advancing to the varsity team, therefore affecting his ability to continue to play. Yes, even at 5'2", he might have had the skills to, who knows, advance to on the college level. advance, even, it would have been heavy, but, even to the pro level. He was just as passionate about basketball as music. But since that avenue of basketball was cut off, then the path of music took him to great heights, but he still enjoyed a good pickup game here and there. And then as the years went on and you're not able to, or as we used to say, when you start, as far as basketball, when you come up out the air, then, again, that's something, to be faced with your own mortality is a pretty heavy thing to live with. And that, and the fact that, you're faced with not being able to do the things that you normally do. This is sort of the basis of, where I think it would get really heavy for a lot of fans, because I think each and every one of us is sort of dealing with that loss in their own way. And some people are going to deal with that, on a different pace than others. And yes, that particular fact alone of the physical wear and tear on his body, the heels, the splits, the constant playing, and I mean playing more than probably any human being in the history of music, period. And the fact that you can't play guitar as much as you want to, or even play piano as much. Yeah, it does open that door in this book to a number of questions. It doesn't bring closure, although I believe Neal Karlen's motivations in a way was to bring closure for himself. But as far as the rest of us that are fans and we pick up, it's going to be a struggle. Like I said, it opens on a pretty heavy note. And then right there, it's like, okay, you're struggling to find the happiness, which you do. You find a lot of good anecdotes and entertaining things, and it peels the layers on a lot of other things as well, positive and negative. But yeah, it raises a lot of serious questions, and the questions that, like I said, most of us, we just choose to ignore it, or we push it so far in the back because it's hard enough to deal with the actual loss. And so we kind of buffer it with, okay, there's a new release, there's stuff from the vault, it feels new to us, even though it's stuff we've heard a million times, some of us, but it's in crystal clear sonic clarity, and we're happy, and it makes us feel good, and we kind of channel the sad emotion into happiness, and that's the power of music, and that's what that does. But I don't know, it's I think George Harrison said it the best in regards to the breakup of the Beatles. It's like all of those fans, they gave their screams and they gave their money. But the Beatles gave their nervous systems, which is a harder thing to give. And I believe in the case of Prince, in the case of Michael Jackson, in the case of Elvis, case of Jimi Hendrix, anybody, that is sort of gone really before their actual time. And, I'm one of those that doesn't believe that, there's some old person in the sky and saying, oh, your time is up. I think there's mathematically preordained destinies, which is based on choice. But like I said, based on mathematical probability, you make a choice to go in one direction, then all of the laws of the universe says this adds up to the outcome. And that's kind of the way it is. And things like murder is the absolute gross interruption of a human being's divine purpose. And that's kind of where I sit on that fact. So when these rock stars or entertainers or anybody, even ordinary human beings, when they're faced with having to give so much of their nervous systems that they're trying to pacify it with drink or with pills or with whatever, then again, that toll to pacify that pain, that toll to keep going forward, when it's like, it'd be cool if you just took a year or two off, just go away to some island someplace and just chill and relax, and then come back, and come out with an album or do a tour or something like that. But to take time for you, but then you're surrounded by sycophants, that's like, oh, well, I'm going to go do this over here. And it's like, oh, well, we're going to go do this over here with you. It raises those questions. This book, it really hits you with that. But that's reality. That's the truth. This is something that has to be addressed with it. And, for good, bad, or indifferent, it does that. Let's see. Moving on. To me, it's also one of the things that I do like about it. It's sort of a deleted scenes behind those classic Rolling Stone interviews. I've had the first one from 1985, and I had the one from 1990. I had those for years, but I've lost those copies. I do have computer printouts of them somewhere, and they're easy to find online. I think there's a couple of Prince websites devoted to collecting all of the interviews. The one with Lisa and Wendy, I had that one as well, but it's not as memorable to me, and I don't know why. I have to, really see what the date was when that issue was published and what I was doing at that time to kind of have it kind of come and go in my memory a little bit. So, but the first one and sort of the last one were the two that I've held on to for years, and to me rank as some of the best Prince interviews ever. The only other one is the Alan Light one from Vibe magazine in 1994. That was a pretty darn good interview as well. But when it comes to Neal Karlen's, like I said, it's kind of like a deleted scenes of those, because it kind of tells a deeper side to portions of those interviews. The one on, based on the first interview, where Prince and Neal Karlen, they go pick up Prince's dad. They head out to the warehouse, which Prince was using at the time before Paisley Park was built. You read that, and like I said, if you were around in 85, yeah, that's, one of the standouts, just how that article opens with that particular scene. And you get this impression that it's like, okay, this is Prince. He's looking out for his dad and everything is cool. But then you get the deleted scene, which is in this book, and it's not so pretty of a picture. Again, it's Prince's duality. I think it was his way of just keeping everybody on their toes, so you don't really get the whole story. You might get half of the truth of one thing, but this is pointed out. And just airing out Prince's, thoughts of his father like that. Yeah, that was one of the things I kind of struggled with in reading this book. But when it, goes to the positive side, which is the very next chapter, then that it kind of provides a balance. And that's kind of the way that I look at it. Like I said, I do agree with the podcast juice assessment or Michael Dean's assessment that, damn, that was kind of cold blooded. But like I said, there is some positive to balance that out, whether it was right or wrong, good, bad, or indifferent. Like I said, I struggled with it while reading it. Like, do I really want to know this? Or is this really true? Because like I said, that part I was struggling with. And then the next part, then it does a better job at kind of balancing the equation. So the bad son chapter, and then right after that is the good son chapter. And I mean, it does put Prince's mom in a better light too, because again, there's those stories, it's like the mom left porn around, and that's how half of the songs on Dirty Mind were born, and that she was into drugs and all this other stuff. And where this was when she went back to school, got her degree, was working as a social worker and making a difference in the lives of other people. And I don't know. I couldn't throw either of my parents under the bus like that. No matter what, again, good, bad, or indifferent. No parent is perfect. All parents do the absolute best that they can. And when you can say that at the end and they turn out to be pretty good, then you've done your job, And then if you lose one here or there, it's because, it's not up to us. They're here to fulfill a divine purpose as well, but they have to make the choices to go in a particular path. And if you've done the best you could and they still choose or make other choices that are, providing that, they are of age, then it's only so much you could do to rein them back in. You can only make so much of a difference like that. But to throw them under the bus like that is, that's heavy to me. And the reasons why, again, I really couldn't get a good understanding through the book. And I think that's the thing that Neal Karlen points out, is that no one will ever get 100% of Prince correct in any book or interview or anything. And that's probably one of the things that I like. Like I said, it peels back the layers. It paints him as a human being. And I'll probably reread this book. It's one of those, that I'll just kind of keep picking up off the shelf and thumbing through it and try to get some deeper understanding, or even the parts that I've struggled with, kind of take that deeper dive and try to get some understanding. I am definitely going to check out the audio version of it. That way you can hear Neal Karlen's voice as he narrates it. You'll get to hear some of the tapes and you'll kind of get a perspective. And again, end up making up your own mind. Now, as far as the dislikes, I probably said it earlier. I wasn't clear on what the agenda was. If it was to provide a counterpoint to what has already been told in other books that have surfaced since 2016, or if it was a balance to the whitewashing of history, so to speak. I do think that ultimately this book succeeds at providing that balance and counteracts the sort of whitewashing. Kind of where I struggle a little bit. He did kind of name check some folks, and I don't know. It's kind of tough. It's hard to say. Because it doesn't make it crystal clear to me. And again, I probably have to reread it or check out the audio version to get the perspective. But I get where he was coming from, and that gave me the impression that part of this was to counteract that sort of whitewashing or that sort of disgruntled, you know, narrative that, say, some of Prince's quote unquote adversaries had been painting before and after 2016. And speaking of disgruntled, probably one of the other dislikes is that it does give the impression that even Neal was a little disgruntled. Even though he's transparent in quite a few anecdotes where it's like, yeah, I was not happy with this person. You know, here Prince is being a jerk and I'm put off by that. Hey, I'm not on his payroll, so therefore I don't have to take this. I'm going to bounce, you know, because he did stop working for Prince, or writing for Prince, should say. And, you know, and I think that kind of comes out because to me in the beginning, it kept repeating about, yes, I wrote this part in Three Chains of Gold. You know, I wrote this part out for him. And, you know, it's like, oh, I didn't get paid. Or, well, I got $5,000. But it was like I was cool with the $5,000. But, you know, it kind of gave that impression to me reading it. Also, the existence of the will. That, to me, it started off as a bit of sensationalism. But since it ended up not being a recurrent theme throughout the book, then I kind of got past that, where it's like, okay, there's this will. Is it he trying to sell the book on this premise? But the way it was handled in the beginning of the book it did kind of put me off to it. And yeah, I wonder if anybody's going to start scrambling around digging up parts of Paisley Park to try to find it. You know, is there a treasure map stashed somewhere? You know, and really, I mean, how valid is it? This is sort of prior to Prince's marriage to Maite when this was drafted. Was it even notarized? You know, apparently it was not filed anywhere. Otherwise, that would have or should have surfaced, you know, in any legal searches for it. But I'm curious as to actually what would be in it, because it seems like it was conceptual. You know, it's like, oh, here's this, you know, rock opera, you know, that ended up going straight to home video. And for those that have seen that, you know, there's a part where he's, you know, bearing the gold chain motorcycle or policeman's cap. What else is in there? Oh, the 3 chains of Turin, which are the 3 chains of gold, which, you know, put together make up the Prince symbol and things like that. And, you know, this bit of a monologue at the end, you know, about why Prince is doing what he's doing. But, you know, I wonder if that's fictional or if there was actual intent. Because if they dig that up and if it's valid, if it's notarized, if, you know, it could shake up the status quo. But like I said, I don't know if that was to sensationalize things as a selling point for the book. But that was one of the things after the first couple of chapters, it was taking me out of the book for a while. It was just kind of like, okay, either tell me what's in the will or, you know, tell me something different other than that it exists. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, my negative feelings overall, they're not as many as the positives in it. Like I said, kind of once you get to the bad son, good son chapters, and then through that, whether it's something positive, whether it's something negative, you will get an understanding. Now, how you react to that understanding, that's entirely up to you. Like I said, it starts off heavy. It ends heavy. But I think what helps as well, it's not just him writing this book. He did speak to Andre Simone. He did speak to Susanna, and also he had spoken to Alan Leeds as well to kind of gain a perspective on certain things that even he was struggling with, or trying to get an understanding of certain events as they were unfolding. And like I said, I do enjoy how it artfully brings up some very, very valid questions as to both how Prince ended up the way he did April 21st, 2016. And not just the fact that he was alone in Paisley Park, but again, the sort of, his own sort of, Minneapolis equivalent of his Memphis Mafia at the time. It does raise certain questions. And like I said, depending on where you are as a fan and how you've been able to cope with everything since then, it will bring, if you've had questions in the back of your mind, this will refresh your memories back to the forefront of those questions and makes you want to ask those questions yourself. If you're one of those you can't deal with that and struggle with that, yes, it's going to be a tough read. And by all means, read the rest of it, and kind of when you get to that certain point, if it's too heavy, put it away until you're ready to get that type of understanding. So overall, my thoughts, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. This is a book that I do recommend that you pick up. So kind of, like I said, there's so many books that are out. Also, he does also name check some of the books that he's read, like the Let's Go Crazy by Alan Light. Let's see, I forget the other book. It's called Dig If You Will, The Picture. I'm drawing a blank on the author right now, but that was a book I was toying with the idea of getting, and a lot of people were saying get that. So I think I'll eventually get around to picking that one up as well. Another one, The Death of Prince Rogers Nelson. Again, the author of that book is escaping me as well. But definitely I want to check that out because that was highly recommended. So, but this book, I think, along with some of those others, this book I would put next to the beautiful ones because, like I said, you're getting something closer to Prince's actual voice in this. So kind of like the beautiful ones, which I'm going to have to dive back into that again. Because to me, I thought that was pretty transparent. It was like he was coming around to being transparent. Although, yeah, in this book, he does give Dan Piepenbring his props for just what they were able to accomplish thus far. And I guess when he read the introduction as well, yeah, a lot of similarities to Neal's journey with Prince as well. The late night phone calls and, the sort of attempt to being transparent on certain levels. So, yeah, it makes me want to kind of reread that book as well and then go back and read that. So, again, it's probably the two closest things to Prince's real voice that we're ever going to get unless somebody surfaces with something. Unless something comes out of the woodwork. So, yep, by all means, check it out. Pick it up. Read it. You'll go on a roller coaster ride of emotions. It will challenge you. It will make you laugh. It will make you cry. It will put you through the ringer. You'll get to relive some important eras. Makes you want to go back and check out the albums again and get some insight too as to what he might have been thinking or feeling. I think the one thing I did forget to mention that was the recurring theme, although I did touch on it a little bit with, like I said, how where Prince was before April 21st of 2016. And I guess the thing I want to check, because I remember somebody, when I did the non-spoiler review, there was a comment that I received about, oh, how could he be lonely and this and that, and he did this and was donating money. You know, there are some pretty evil people on earth that donate money. Now, I'm not saying that Prince was evil or anything, but again, the thing that I have to stress is that Prince was a human being. And the thing is, and I've touched on this in previous episodes as well, he's one of those few people that have gone where no one has gone before as far as fame or celebrity. And sad to say, that journey is very similar to Elvis. It's similar to Michael Jackson. Because when you kind of get to that level and you don't have enough people around you, or you build this sort of wall around yourself because you're trying to maintain that level, meaning that you've made it this far to the top. Now you have to fight to stay there. Yeah, sometimes bottom line is that you just can't be no punk in this journey. You just can't. This is not a business for the weak-hearted. It's show business. It's not friend business. It's the music business. It's not the family business. And yeah, whatever, and a lot of times too, fame, money, and celebrity does not fix the issues that make you the great artist. Sometimes it's a common tale. They're outsiders. Most, introverted, they're considered outsiders, they're considered outcasts, and 9 times out of 10, they're not fully accepted into normal human society. That's why they are able to be who they are. And yes, that can be a very lonely ride. I'd say, the Beatles, again, if you check out the Beatles anthology, again, George Harrison put the punctuation mark on it. They had each other. It was the 4 of them. Any one of those 4 started to get a little crazy. The other 3 were there to bring them back down to earth. And they were able to share that experience together as 4 individuals. Unlike Elvis, unlike Michael Jackson, and unlike Prince, now, yeah, everybody who was considered a quote unquote a friend, and few were, where there was any of them, but they weren't the famous ones, and, revolution aside, whoever aside, there was only one Prince, and only he knew what it felt like. Like I said, he had the revolution with him, or he had Morris Day, or he had Andre Simone, or he had Jill Jones, or whoever at the end, Judith Hill, or Kirk John, whatever. But only Prince knows what it's like to be that way. Like I said, it wasn't a band, an equal partnership, say like the Beatles, or even the Rolling Stones. Even though there's Mick and Keith, there's still Charlie Watts. There was still Brian Jones. There was still Mick Taylor. They knew what it was like in that bubble, and they had each other to a certain point. So with Elvis and Michael and Prince, no, it's just them and them alone. And no matter what band member, no matter what personal assistant, no matter what hangers on, no, nobody can tell you what it's like to be inside their heads and what they feel like. And in that respect, because they've always felt like the loner. They've always felt like the insider. That being treated like an outcast is what fueled their drive to be able to express what they were feeling only through their art. Because if they could do it as ordinary human beings, they wouldn't be in the position that they were. Or if they had that support system like a John, Paul, George, and Ringo, they could cope with it a little bit better. So with that being said, like I said, it does paint that picture and makes it very, very real. And that's why I kind of recommend it, because it does kind of give you that insight on that level of fame, that level of celebrity, that level of power, and the importance of having good people around you to look out for you too. That you know, if you're going to take that path, that's what you need. And that's that. So we're going to end this episode, but definitely tell me what you think. If you've had a chance to read this book, does this help? Like I said, I recommend the Podcast Juice. You get the shorter version, but like I said, I agree with their assessment as well. But yes, check it out. So if you're going to check it out, check it out. If you've already read it, leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts. This week I was going to do Brown Mark's, do a spoiler review of that book as well. That I'm going to save to next week, because as I was putting the notes for this together, this was too heavy to, otherwise we'd have a 3-hour show. But I'll do Brown Mark's book next week, spoiler review. Not sure what other topics I'll have next week either, if it's just going to be that, but tune in next week. Also, to my final review of the Sign of the Times Super Deluxe, which will be the part on the New Year's Eve at Paisley Park DVD. That will be next week as well, and only on YouTube. But in the meanwhile, check out the other reviews, the original album review, Vault Tracks review, live CD review. All that is on YouTube, on the Amari Communications channel. Check it out. And also look for me November 1st with my Twitter thread for Adore. I'm having fun working on it, so I hope you'll enjoy it as well. But check out the other podcasters and Prince scholars and Prince enthusiasts. This is a fun thread. We've dubbed ourselves the Purple Avengers. I'm not sure, who am I? Am I the Falcon or am I T'Challa? I'm going to have to talk to some folks about that. But I'm cool either way, because both of those some cool superheroes. And if I'm T'Challa, I have to work on my Wakandan accent. So tune in next week, folks. And also don't forget to download and listen on your favorite podcast platform, as well as like and subscribe on YouTube. And I will see you guys next week. And as always, keep it purple and on the one.